Are you ready to untangle from your past, recover from heartbreak, and revive your life? This is Soul CPR with your host, Ann Papayoti. We've all had soul-crushing experiences and lost ourselves in our pain, but there is a way out. On this podcast, Amazon best-selling author, award-winning life coach, and advice columnist Ann Papayoti helps us navigate the path from heartbreak to healing. So now, please welcome the host of Soul CPR, Ann Papayoti.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first show of 2025. I'm happy to be back with you live on Tuesdays to continue conversations that matter in our overall health and well-being. I do hope you had a holiday season that brought joy to your hearts and homes, whether that meant laid back and peaceful or bustling and loud. Personally, I like some of both, a balance, if you will. Some festive gatherings and some silent nights. Unfortunately, I rang in the new year with the flu, so I ended up with more low-key pajama days than I wanted. It's been years since I've had that virus. Anyway, I hope you are all well and healthy. I did stream more shows than usual and ate less. And anyway, taking down the decorations can wait, right? So I started off a little bit behind, as they say. And please do excuse me today if my voice breaks a little or if I cough or sneeze. I'll try not to spread the virus, at least through the computer. As I say this, now, I do know that the truth is that some of you did not have joyous holidays due to the current circumstances in your lives or something unexpected that possibly happened that has you now hurting. I've been there during the holidays previously. I feel you. I'm sorry that you're hurting, and I'm sending you a big, compassionate hug. And I'm here to remind you that whatever it is, you can and will heal with the gift of time, awareness, and self-compassion. All right, today we are continuing our Letting Go series that we began just before the holiday break. In the first part of that series, we talked about our attachments to people and places, things and memories, both good and bad. And we talked about the emotional barriers to letting go and the primary emotions being love, fear, and anger. Now, letting go means confronting these invisible emotional barriers, if you will, and that means confronting the past. And why do we say that? Because we can't change what we don't first acknowledge. And some people will describe, in fact, many people will describe being trapped in the past by ruminating, sort of punishing thoughts, revisiting scenes with someone, playing out the different what ifs and searching for the whys and the what did I do wrongs. Well, on this show, we focus on relationships. And when it comes to letting go of relationships, it's normal to revisit hurts that have not yet been resolved. But revisiting them should be for a time in your life and not for a lifetime. So is it time to let something go in your life or someone? The first step is awareness that you're holding on to something or someone that is no longer serving you. And getting past the past really is less about what happened then than about your willingness to put in the tough work of healing. Now, some people are chained to the past, if you will, and others I find are tied by a delicate thread, but a complicated pattern, perhaps like a spider web. Regardless, to begin to untangle and detach involves remembering what hurt you, the injury, if you will, and reconsidering it from a different, more empathetic perspective if it's something from the past you're holding on to. If it's something from the present, it's acknowledging the pain that's being created, how it's holding you back, and why you deserve something different. Now, in some cases, you may not be cutting ties altogether with someone, say a family member. You may be loosening the knot. That might be the next step for you. For example, you may need to reconfigure a relationship, redefine it so that you're less giving, more realistic. And let me say this for clarification. Letting go is not forgetting. It is more like a positive shift in you about something or someone that frees you so that it no longer lives rent free in your mind space, that it's not an intruder on your happiness. And as we discussed on the last show, per the premise of positive psychology, it's not that we deny or pretend that whatever hurt us wasn't bad or caused us pain, but rather we choose to focus on and find the silver lining. We choose to heal. So we don't necessarily get over the past, but we get past the past in a healthy and genuine way. So letting go isn't just about saying goodbye to something or someone. It's truly about stepping into freedom. And that's even whether it's things we hold on to, right? It's hard to say goodbye to certain things that we hold on to when we look around our homes. I have a client now who's dealing with um, a lot of clutter in her mother's home because of a hoarding issue, but the holding on, and then the sister's having a difficult time with the letting go of the things. So, but it's not just about the saying goodbye. It's about stepping into freedom, because how does the thing, that either the thoughts, the memories, the actual things, or the people, the relationships, prevent you from living your best life? It's just not always easy to let go, is it? And my conversations since the first segment have revealed that the next thing to let go of is how to let go of letting go. Does that make sense? Meaning, if you've ever felt the weight of guilt or regret after letting go of a person, a relationship, even a dream, you're not alone. There's emotional aftermath, right? That's the part that sometimes we're not really prepared for. So we have to uncover why those feelings tend to linger, and more importantly, how to move through them with grace. So this series isn't just about letting go, it's about finding peace and freedom on the other side of letting go. What's the good of letting go of what has harmed us or caused pain for us or blocked us from our best life if we carry forward guilt and regret? Well, let's talk about that. We all have our reasons for holding on, whether it's to stuff, clothing, clutter, or to relationships that aren't good for us, or to negative feelings towards someone or something or someplace, or to painful emotions. Whatever may be the source of our resistance to letting go, and no matter the story we tell ourselves and the excuses we make, I find in my conversations a universal theme popping up, and that is the theme of guilt, and sometimes regret, and sometimes those two are almost indistinguishable. So let's talk about some of the common sources of guilt and regret. Often in my practice, it's about ending friendships or ending a romantic relationship, whether it was toxic or not, or stepping away from definitely toxic family dynamics. So, if these are sources of guilt and regret, but let's say the friendship wasn't good for you in some way, the romantic relationship maybe wasn't mutual and or was toxic in some way, The family dynamics are toxic. We're using that word. It's not good for us. Why do we end up with guilt and regret? Why do we feel these emotions? Well, according to study.com, guilt is the emotion that we humans feel after committing an act that we believe negatively impacts other people. So it's a psychological response that we have that because we recognize some level of responsibility for possibly creating harm or a problem for somebody else. So that tells me that guilt is tied to empathy. So who's going to feel guilty after making a choice to let go of a relationship of some sort? The empathetic, right? You and I will. So also according to study.com, guilt is an emotional experience that manifests in response to one's having committed an action or having a thought or feeling an emotion that one deems wrong or bad. So guilt stems from the tension between an individual's desires and the expectations of the systems around them, they would say. So guilt can be expressed through words and deeds and perhaps even physical demonstrations, apologies, acts and kinds that are meant to counteract negative actions or changes in behavior. But physical demonstrations, the feeling of guilt that starts manifesting physically, can be nausea, dizziness, a raised heart rate. All of these can be an expression of guilt experienced by an individual who's feeling that emotion. Emotional guilt is an individual's guilt in response to having these thoughts that they've categorized as bad. But hear me say this, guilt is an emotion experienced in the mental and physical symptoms of the body. So it's tied closely to anxiety. It can be a negative emotion and a positive one, and we'll talk about that in a minute, depending on how it is managed or expressed. Now, I love researcher Brene Brown's simplified distinction between guilt and shame. So let's talk about that real quick. Guilt says I did something bad, meaning I did something against my value system, while shame says I am bad, meaning I am unworthy, unkind, unlovable. Shame is harsh and punitive and is never yours to carry. But here's the positive side of guilt. I like guilt per this definition because it helps me stay true to myself. It's like an indicator light in the car that says the oil is low. If I ignore it and keep driving, I may harm the engine, right? If I keep going against myself in life, the consequences will be negative. But if I feel guilt, I can check in with myself and figure out why and then self-correct. Maybe I do owe someone an apology. Maybe I did do something bad, meaning against my value system. I can self-correct. So getting back to the choice of letting go, it's the same thing. But when you realize you did not go against yourself, but honored yourself when you made the decision to let go of someone or feelings towards them or whatever it may be in your case, then you also must let go of having let go, right? And recognize that if you're feeling guilt in this situation, that it's misplaced guilt that you're feeling. Have you ever heard it said that guilt is optional? I found that to be such a freeing statement. As an empathetic person, it gave me something to hold on to as my choice, that guilt is an option that contributes to my suffering. That I was trying to end suffering by letting go of the whomever or the whatever in the first place. So when it comes to that kind of guilt, the negative guilt, the anxiety laden guilt, I opt out. What about you? Now, regret. That's the other one. Oh, I'm just looking at the time. How about we take our first break and we'll come back and we'll talk about regret, which is closely akin as an emotion to guilt. Don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Ann Papayotti, and this is Soul CPR on Bold Brave TV. Thank you for joining us today. So we were just talking about guilt and regret. So when we're letting go of someone or something, often once we've made that decision and actually taken that action, we might still carry forward something that's just as heavy, such as guilt or regret. So regret is also a common emotion that, let's say, occurs when our behavior results in undesirable outcomes, not necessarily for us, but for people around us. And maybe they create then an environment around us that feels undesirable for us. And I see this with the toxic family scenario quite often. There's a lot of the whys and the what's wrong with you, and then the kind of blaming the person for having set some kind of boundary, and then this person starts having regret because it feels perhaps more toxic than it maybe did before, or at least what they experienced before they were used to, and now this is a whole new battery of things. So regret can start coming in. But if, let's say, we break up with a romantic partner and are left feeling lonely, we may feel regret because, say, we would rather be in a relationship that was unhealthy or with the wrong person than be alone. But if we break up, then meet the love of our lives, we quickly let go of regret, right? So we don't know what the possible outcome may be. But regret is another negative emotion, and it feels a lot like self-blame. So it too can have damaging effects on our mind and body. And this one can resemble depression because there's a lot of repetitive, negative, self-focused thoughts. The way out of regret is literally to trust yourself when you make a decision. Hold the letting go decision accountable to your values and best interest, and focus forward. Limit exposure, which becomes a boundary, to those who would try to convince you otherwise. So, in that case, I would say regret can be an option, just like guilt. Now, you may feel some discomfort as you move into something different and new, but you have opened yourself up for opportunities like the letting go of an unhealthy relationship, and possibly now the opportunity to meet a true love. And research shows that the two key things that lead to regret in general are not taking opportunities in life. So, letting go of letting go. Is this an issue for you? What, if anything, gets in your way once you make the decision of letting go? Is it other people's opinions, judgments? Is it being alone, the uncertainty of what's coming next? What is it? Think about it, because that's going to be the next challenge, right? I want to share a story about a woman I worked with. We'll call her Emma. Emma carried a heavy burden of guilt after ending a long-term friendship. She felt like she had failed as a friend, even though the relationship had become one-sided and emotionally draining. Every time she thought about it, the regret would creep in, whispering, "You should have tried harder." Now, the first thing that I encouraged Emma to do was to sit with her feelings instead of running from them. One afternoon, she set aside time and lit a candle and simply let herself feel. Tears came, but so did clarity. She realized she wasn't guilty of being a bad friend. She was feeling guilty for choosing herself for the first time. This was the moment she began to see her emotions as valid, but not permanent. Now, Emma's inner critic kept telling her, "You're selfish for walking away." So we worked on reframing those thoughts. She wrote them down in a journal, then responded to them as if she were speaking to a dear friend. "I'm not selfish," she wrote. "I'm human. I did what I needed to do to protect my emotional health." Slowly, those kinder thoughts began to drown out the critical ones. Now, Emma admitted she regretted not addressing the imbalance in the friendship sooner, so she wrote her former friend a heartfelt letter, not to send, but to address her own feelings. And in it, she took responsibility for letting things linger too long and forgave herself for not knowing how to handle it better. This act of writing was her way of releasing what she could not change. Now, one day, Emma tried something new. She placed her hand over her heart, closed her eyes, and said aloud, "I did the best I could at the time, and I deserve peace." Now, at first, it felt awkward, but over time, this small act of kindness toward herself became a daily ritual, and with each repetition, her guilt softened. And to counter her regret, Emma began a gratitude practice. Each morning, she wrote down one thing gained from letting go of the friendship. Her list started with small things, such as, "I have more time for myself." And over time, her gratitude deepened to things like, I've learned to set boundaries. I've built healthier relationships. And these types of reflections reminded her of how far she'd come. Finally, Emma decided she needed closure, and she wrote all her lingering guilt and regret on a piece of paper. She folded it carefully and burnt it in a small ceremony in her backyard. Now, she watched the paper turn to ash. She imagined her guilt and regret dissolving too. And this symbolic act marked a turning point for her, a moment of release. Now, as you listen to Emma's story, you need to know that Emma did not go through this alone. She confided in a close friend who reassured her she'd made the right decision. She also worked with a coach. She joined a support group where she found people who had faced similar struggles on Facebook. And their stories gave her hope and reminded her she wasn't the only one navigating these emotions. And today, Emma says letting go of that friendship was one of the hardest things she's ever done, but also one of the most freeing things. She no longer carries the weight of guilt and regret. And instead, she carries lessons about self-worth and boundaries and the power of choosing herself. So her story, I believe, reminds us that letting go is a process. And every step in that process, no matter how small or how big, moves us closer to that peace that we do all seek in that or from that. Now, in Emma's story, there were actually practical steps to let go of guilt and regret. And this is what I would call the art. And remember, this series is the art and science of letting go. So let's look back at what were the practical steps outlined in Emma's story that you too can use if you're looking to let go. The first one was acknowledge and validate emotions. Emma set aside the time. Remember when I said she lit a candle and she let herself feel and the tears came? So that's a practical step. Acknowledge and validate the emotions. We talk about that a lot on this show because so many of us minimize our own feelings rather than feel them, or we bottle them up, or we set them aside, we push beyond them. We need to sit with them, feel them, understand them, allow them. So acknowledge and validate. Another step that we heard in her story was to challenge the inner critic. Remember how punishing that was? In her story, her inner critic, that inner message was telling her she was selfish for walking away. So she had to work on reframing those thoughts, and she used a journal to do that. What were the negative thoughts coming to her? She would write those. This was one of our activities or our coaching challenges. She would write the negative messages, and then she would respond with a positive one in her journal until it became easier and easier and easier to do that, to challenge them without having to have the written ones. It became a way of being rather than something to have to do. That makes sense. Another step that we heard in her story was taking responsibility and releasing control. So remember in her story, she took responsibility that she had not addressed the imbalance in the relationship earlier, that it had become one-sided, but she hadn't really addressed it and given it the opportunity to be different until it had taken too much of a toll on her. So she took responsibility for that, wrote that heartfelt letter, not to send it. Who she owed it to was herself. She had to forgive herself for having not taken that action at that time, right? And let go of that control, that need to change the past, which is where we carried regret, right? There's always that need to change. She couldn't change it. So that became an acceptance, releasing control. Another step we heard was the practice of self-compassion. That was when she placed her hand over her heart. This is something I've done in workshops. If anybody listening has been in one of my workshops, I've probably had you put your hand over your heart. But in this particular case, her mantra was to say that she did the best she could at the time and that she deserved peace. And this is something that a lot of people struggle to say, I deserve better, or um, to recognize themselves as having done the best that they could. So this is a personal act of kindness towards yourself. We're much better at giving it to others than to ourselves. So this is something that a commitment of repetition of a daily act of kindness toward herself was practiced, and it worked. Another step was using gratitude to shift perspective. And gratitude is always the key, people, always the key to freedom in anything. But Emma started a gratitude practice, as we heard in her story. Her list started with small things, and it grew over time. She was able to uh, end up not just with boundaries, but healthier relationships, which is a goal with boundaries. But she started with just, I think it was time for herself. So recognizing gratitude and a practice of gratitude, which can be a daily listing. Whether you start your morning with it, end your day, I encourage both, whether it's just in your thought life or in your journaling practice, having that gratitude time. Um, Creating a letting go ritual. That was her burning, right? For her closure of the lingering guilt. So she wrote anything that was left over, the residual guilt, on a piece of paper, and had that fire ceremony. We do this in a lot of workshops too, and certainly at my retreats. There's always going to be a letting go ritual to have a symbolic marking of release. Love that. Okay. And the last thing was her support. She sought support. Of course, she was a coaching client. She also had a friend that was like-minded that could stand by her through this. And then she found a group of people that she could network with, if you will, and share struggles and triumphs and support one another on their way. I'm here to tell you, you're never alone in what you're going through. You just have to have the courage to share your story. All right, it is time for our second break. Don't go far, and we will come back with more on Soul CPR.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
And we're back. Thank you for being here with me today, whether you're tuning in live or listening on demand. We have so much to share this year, and we're just getting started with the second in our Letting Go series. And what we just talked about in Emma's story was really the art of letting go. So what's the science? So if we understand the brain's role, well, I want you to know that that guilt often triggers the amygdala, and that's our emotional processing center. And this activation creates a heightened sense of emotional distress. So, if guilt's an option, why opt for additional emotional distress, right? Practicing mindfulness, meditation can help reduce this overactivation and allow you to process guilt more calmly. There's been a study on mindfulness that showed that even 8 weeks of consistent practice significantly reduced emotional reactivity and helped the participants manage guilt more effectively. So there you go. If you're struggling with guilt, there is science behind why and how to decrease that struggle. And then when it comes to a regret, it often stems from those repetitive thoughts about past decisions, as we said. Well, the brain's neuroplasticity allows us to rewire these thought patterns by introducing new empowering narratives. This is all about the story we tell ourselves about whatever it is, right? So this comes back to another art. Journaling daily about one positive outcome from a past decision that you regret can help reframe the experience. And we want to reframe that experience. Why? Because of neuroplasticity. We're literally rewiring our brain as you start reframing. So, for instance, leaving a toxic relationship might have led to personal growth or a new opportunity or taking a chance on something that brought in a new friend, whatever it may be. What's at least one thing, one positive outcome from a decision that you've held on to regret about? More science. Studies by Dr. Kristen Neff, I believe I have that correct, show that practicing self-compassion activates the brain's soothing system, reducing feelings of guilt and shame. So there's a plug for being kind to yourself. This is associated with increased activity in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which governs self-acceptance. So be kind to yourself. There's science behind it. So when guilt arises, that placing your hand over your heart and speaking kindly to yourself, as Emma did, speaking to yourself like you would a best friend, can calm neural pathways and promote hormonal release that's calming. Hello, this is how we help ourselves. And what about EFT, emotional freedom techniques? We have done this on the show before. EFT is tapping. So tapping on acupressure points has been shown to reduce cortisol, the stress hormone levels, which are elevated during periods of guilt or regret. So a study found that participants who practiced EFT experienced a significant decrease in distress related to unresolved emotions. They reported greater clarity and peace about their decisions. So, regretting your decision, try tapping. More science. Visualization can stimulate the brain's reward center and encourage dopamine release. So visualizing, a fulfilling future without the burden of guilt can create positive reinforcement for letting go. So the art of visualization is creating dopamine release, positive reinforcement. So if we spend just, say, 5 minutes each day visualizing ourselves feeling light and free and having embraced, let's say, the wisdom that we've gained from our decisions rather than the weight of feeling guilty or regretful, I wonder what might be different for us. All right. So, art and science, and the two shall marry one another to create our best outcomes. Now, something else that I wanted to talk to you about today. There's a theory recently made popular by motivational guru Mel Robbins called the let them theory. Have you heard about this? It means let people be who they are, do what they do, without allowing it to impact you negatively or affect you in a way that you become reactive or experience negative energy. Ultimately, it's a mindset to help you let go of expectations of others and to let go of what you cannot control, while focusing on the second part of the theory, which is let me, meaning be who I am, true to me, in control of what I can control. Let me be healthy, whole, etc. Keep going, filling in the blanks. And it reminds me of the final chapter in my co-authored book, The Gift of Shift. It's titled The Gift of Beautiful. And it's a play on the word beautiful with the word you, Y-O-U, spelled out. And I talk about being like a caged lion pacing back and forth, waiting for my husband who is never on time, becoming more and more agitated and frustrated, ultimately affecting not only my state of mind and body, but then our relationship, until I make a decision to let him be him and let me be me. Now, what I came to accept was that while time was a high value for me, on time specifically, it simply was not for him. So, when it was time to leave for an important event, if he wasn't ready, I would choose to go alone and not be kept pacing furiously, waiting, feeling caged while he's singing in the shower unaffected. And he would find his way to the event on his own, in his own time. Now, since I changed how I showed up, he has as well. He now steps it up for important occasions because he really doesn't want to go alone. That impacted his value, a different value. And I've relaxed about the less important events. Let's say going to the movies. I don't have to maybe see the previews, even though I enjoy them. But I can relax on that on-time event so that we can show up together. So harmony and balance have started coexisting. That freedom of letting go, I have it, not from letting go of my value, but from letting go of the requirement that he have the same one. that he show up in life living the same way as I do. When there's a marriage or a committed relationship, there has to be compromise. And that is what we found. But there are deal breaker values. And those are the ones that you have to get on the same page about. But then there are these where you can find the compromise. And that is what we were able to work for. But I had to let go of the expectation to free myself from that cage and frustration and the impact that it had on my marriage, which was negative because I was in a bad mood. Definitely in a bad mood. All right. It is time for our third and final break. And when we come back, we will have some final thoughts on this show. And I'll give you a little preview for what's coming up in the third part of the Letting Go series. See you soon.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Mike Zorich, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorich, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorich has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Welcome back, everyone. I just wanted to read a little excerpt from The Gift of Beautiful. I wanted to share this. The story I share was we were on our way to a wedding, and I did leave him in the shower and go on to the wedding without him, which was a bit shocking for him. However, it is what allowed us to find this place of compromise eventually. But what I realized was that I had come to realize that in all the scenarios that he was never thinking what I was feeling, right? He wasn't thinking what I was feeling. The conflict was within me and invisible to him. And I could influence my husband, but not control him to think or be like me. I could, however, choose to be me. That was what was within my control, my choice, and ultimately my personal responsibility for creating my own happiness. It was also my responsibility to share and be myself with him. Many of my clients are dealing with relationship conflict, separation, divorce. Regardless of your situation, I'm sure you've heard of a term used in family court, irreconcilable differences, and such differences are often related to those non-deal breaker values and daily living nuances where individuals fail to learn to take responsibility for creating their own outcomes. So much could be reconciled if we were open to taking guidance before falling into the depths of those chasmic divides too far to climb back. But it's when we discount our value systems and make choices that compromise them that we experience guilt and some of its emotional cousins. For example, if I were late arriving to the wedding, I may have felt embarrassment. I may then have blamed my husband for my feelings, which would have created unnecessary conflict in our relationship. And it's the negative emotions that are the thieves of our peace and happiness. So, why go through life against ourselves? Being in conflict with your values is a self defeating behavior. So, get clear on who you are and what you stand for. Be yourself. Everyone else is taken, as they say, and you are beautiful just the way you are. Now, coming up this month, I have some incredible guests to share with you. Their personal stories of overcoming and healing. And we will also have part 3 to our Letting Go series. And in that third and final part, we're going to explore how once we've released all we need to, that what comes next is really learning to trust the process of life, even when the future feels uncertain, because it's about having created the space for what's to come, right? Because letting go isn't about an ending. It's the beginning of something new. So as this episode of Soul CPR comes to a close, remember that healing is not a linear journey, but rather a process of profound transformation. If today's episode resonated with you, please share the podcast with someone who might need a lifeline of their own. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts. And you can always connect with me on social media, on Facebook at Skyview Coaching, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X, it will be at Ann Papayotti. Let me know your thoughts, your stories, and the topics you'd like to explore in future episodes. And you can get The Gift of Shift on Amazon. I think we may have a link to show you, or it'll definitely be in the show notes if you're interested in that book and to read more about different themes in life and guided journaling prompts for each of those stories. Until next time, may you find the strength in your vulnerability and the courage in your journey. I thank you for listening. Breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully.
This has been Soul CPR with host Ann Papayotti. Breathe life back into your spirit with each episode, where she and special guests explore the relationships that hurt us and discover that healing can only begin with you. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.